Hi Mad About Yarners, how are you all doing? This is what we're going to be knitting next.
So mad about yarners. I hope you're excited to knit this jumper, and I hope you like my little preview of what it's going to look like. The jumper itself is really easy. If you are an absolute beginner, this jumper is a dream because there's hardly any shaping in this jumper, and I've made it big so that if you knit a little bit tight it will still fit, and if you knit a little bit loose then it will still fit. It will just be a little bit baggier, but do a tension square so that you get it there or thereabouts. But don't worry trying to keep changing needles to get it exact, because you don't need to for this. What I want you to do with this jumper is just practice and have a garment at the end that you can wear. So it is super chunky that we're going to be using. You're going to need about 1,000 grams of your main colour and 300 grams of a contrasting colour if you're going to work in the stripes as the preview jumper. If you're not and you don't like stripes and you think, you know what, I've just got a really nice multicolour yarn that's self-striping and I just want to use that for the whole jumper without putting any contrast in, then do that. But then you'll need about 1,300 grams of yarn. So I've mixed my yarn. I'm using some 30% wool and 70% acrylic, and then for my contrast I'm using, this one is my Robin yarn, and I do like the Robin super chunky because it's really nice to work with. It knits up beautifully, it washes really well. It's 100% acrylic, and there's a really good range of colours, and it's reasonably priced. So that's why I've put, and I really love this colour, so I'm going to use that. This is, we're going to be doing a nice 2x2 rib, so that's 2 knit 2 purl, and we get this lovely chunky rib rather than the tight knit one purl one rib. And the reason I've gone for a 2x2 is because, as you can see, it's a really slouchy jumper. In the preview picture you can see it just hangs, it's sort of warm and cuddly looking, and so I think the style of it suits a 2x2 rib, so that's why I've gone with that. If you want to put a tighter cuffs on, do that, use the same amount of stitches but do a knit one purl one. I'll leave that to you. As I always say, choose your own adventure. So without further ado, the sizes that this jumper will fit will be, I've knitted, the first size will be sort of 38, and it will knit up, so that's 38 inches. So if you're a 38-inch chest or just under, it will knit up to 45 inches. If you are a 40 to 42 chest, it will knit up to about 50 inches. If you're a 44 to 46 chest, it will knit up to 53 inches. And if you're a 48 to 50 inch chest, it will knit up to 60 inches. So there's plenty of room there for all of us. All of my knitting patterns, I'll try and do bigger sizes so that everybody can enjoy them and enjoy wearing the garments that I'm making. Okay, so that's that. So, although I've just showed you that jumper, I've started a rib. So this is going to be knit 2 purl 2. Okay, starting with the back, cast on the number of stitches required. So hopefully you've cast on the number of stitches that you need. And we're going to start with knit 2, and then we're just going to do knit 2 purl 2 to the end of the row. Now what I've done is I've made sure that the stitch number means that you don't have to think about, when you turn your work, whether or not it's a knit or a purl. It will be a knit. So your last 2 stitches on your needle, when you get to them, so you're going to do knit 2 purl 2, knit 2 purl 2, knit 2 purl 2 right to the end of your row, and your last 2 stitches should be a purl 2. okay, because then when you turn your work, you're going to knit them, so you don't have to worry about it. The tip before you start, if you get to the end of a row and you find you've got one stitch that's not right, so you've got knit 2 and then you're left with 1 stitch, it's because you've probably done a knit 1, purl 1 somewhere. And I'm going to just show you what to look out for if that happens. When you do a knit stitch, it looks flat like that at your needle, and if you've done a purl, you'll have this little bobble here. Can you see that? So you've got a bobble. So when you're looking, if where that knit should be, that's got a bobble on it, that's there, sorry, where that knit stitch is, if that was a bobble and you saw 3 bobbles in a row, then you know you've gone wrong. And so then you'd have to undo just up to that bit and put it right. Okay, so that's your tip. So where it's a knit stitch, it should be flat, and if it's a purl stitch, it'll have a bobble on it like this. If you are using 2 colours, what you'll find is every time you add your stripe, if you cut the yarn, you'll end up with a tassel that needs sewing in like this. So I've changed from my main colour to my stripe, cut the yarn to then put the main colour back in. What I'm going to show you here is how we can run the 2 threads up the side of the garment. It won't be really bulky, so that's fine, but it will save you having to sew in the yarns. So to avoid all of that sewing, what we're going to do is just weave our colours up the side every 2 rows, and we're just going to do that by creating a twist. So I've done my 2 rows of yellow, and I've got my long thread here still attached to my ball on the end. What I don't want to do is just leave it till I get to row 9 and oh, you can't see me, can you? And have a big thread like that. Or if I was doing it that way, I would have a big thread from there to there. You can see that, for a big thread from there to there, just dangling, and then I've got to sew it in. So I don't want to do that because it's a bit untidy. So what I'm going to do is I've done my 2 rows. I've now done 2 rows of my main colour, and then before I start my next row, all I'm going to do is do a twist. So like that, can you see the twist? And then I'm going to pick this one up and start knitting, and that thread will be caught up the side. So hopefully you can see that. I'm going to push my needle in there. Ooh. I'm going to knit my first stitch. I'll knit a couple of stitches. There you go. And then what you can see is that has now pulled up into the side of the work. So I'm going to carry on doing that up the side. So when we get to the top of our back, when you've got it to the length you want, to your shoulders here, sort of there, and down to your bottom, wherever it is that you want it, or if you want it at your waist because you want it to be really sort of trendy, you could do that. We're going to just shape the shoulders. Okay, and to shape the shoulders, all you need to do is cast off 9 stitches at the beginning of the next 2 rows. Okay, and then once you've done that, you're going to cast off 10 stitches at the beginning of the following 2 rows. So you'll have cast off 9 going one way, cast off 9 coming back that way, cast off 10 going that way, cast off 10 going back the other way. And what you should have left on your needle, I don't want you to cast those off, I want you to put those on a holder, and then that's your back done. Right, we've completed the front of our sweater, and we've got up to the neck shaping, so that's what we're going to do next. So looking at the pattern, circle the size that you want. That's always a good tip when you're knitting or crocheting. I don't like to write on my patterns, but occasionally I do. Anyway, so with your right side facing, we're now going to shape the neck. And the way that we're going to do this is we're going to knit on, take that down, we're going to knit on a set of stitches like that, and then we're going to turn it round and carry on knitting and work that bit up. Then we're going to put some stitches in the centre on a holder, and then we're going to do the same sort of shaping on the other side, and then sort of cast off both sides as we go along. So that's how we're going to do it. We're going to work one side and the second side. It's really easy. Quite like doing neck shaping, especially with chunky yarn. You don't need to do many rows for it to get to where you need to be, especially on a jumper like this. So this front should be 2 inches shorter in length than your back, okay? And then when we finish the shaping, the 2 sides should match. So I'm just going to turn my work around. Now I've got the wrong side facing me. So what we're going to do is we're going to purl 2 together on this row. Purl 2 together, and then just purl to the end of your row, okay? In the background, I think you might be able to hear my birds. I think I've talked about them before. So we've got a couple of parrots, and we look after other people's birds while they're on holiday. So we are now in April. So we've got a couple of birds coming in and out. We do little pets as well, like guinea pigs and rabbits. And we've got a ginormous rabbit in the garden at the moment that we're looking after for somebody. But we've got 2 parrots of our own. So you can usually hear Bill nattering in the background. And sometimes I have to have the door open because if he's out his cage, he will come trotting in to see what we're doing. But we've got a few birds in at the minute, and you can hear Kiki going heep, heep. So I hope it's not too annoying. I quite like it because they cheer me up, especially when I'm on my own. Okay, so if you've purled to the end, you should have purled 2 together, and then just purl across the rest of the row. So now you'll have 1 stitch less. Okay, in the next row, we're going to knit to the last 2 stitches of those that we've got left, and then we're going to knit 2 together. Okay, so we're going to decrease 1 more at that neck edge. And when you're looking at a pattern, it might say decrease every other row at neck edge, and if it says that, it means it's this bit here. So not your shoulder, this bit here. So because you're going to shape that round, it might be a V, it might be a round, it might be tight, it might not. But when it says decrease at neck edge, that's what it means. So you just carry on to, knit it or purl it to the end of the row, and then knit the 2 together, or whatever it tells you to do. So I've knitted across, and I've got to my last 2 stitches here, and I'm going to knit these 2 together. So now you should have 2 less than where you started, and you can see, you can see what's happening here. I'll take my fingers away. So we're starting to create this shaping for the neck, so that when we put the neckband on, it goes around. Okay, you're going to do that until you've got those 2 stitches left, the number of stitches left that you require. Okay, and then we'll shape the shoulders. Okay. Now that we've completed our 3 rows straight with no shaping, we're going to complete this shoulder, and that's how it looks on the needle. So you can see I've created this hole here because that's my neck shaping just there. So I've still got my right side facing me. Doesn't matter if you've got your wrong side facing you, but the shaping is going to be exactly the same. So for our next row, we're going to cast off 8 stitches. So we're going to cast off 8. Don't know how to cast off, you knit the next stitch and then you just pull this stitch over the top, and then what you end up with is that sort of edge like that. And we're going to knit to the end of the row, turn your work, and then just work that row without any shaping so that you come back to the beginning of your cast off edge. Turn the work again and cast off 9 stitches. Do that again and cast off the remaining stitches. It'll probably just be a few left over. And that is the shoulder complete. And then what you'll have is one shoulder complete like that, with your neck shaping like that. And so what we're going to do next is we're going to put these centre stitches here onto a spare pin, and then we're going to do the same workings on the second shoulder. So I'm going to put my centre stitches onto one of these, which is like a big, it's got a hook thing on and you pull it off and opens up like that, but it's got a fairly blunt end, so it's not going to catch your work. And so you want to put your centre stitches on. As you can see, we've got our cast off edge, our left side shaping and the middle of the neck. Those stitches are now on a pin, ready to be picked up when we're going to put the neck on. So we're not going to do that yet. So you want your right side facing. And we're going to do exactly the same on this side in terms of shaping as we did on the first side. So I'm going to rejoin my yarn and I'm going to knit my first 2 stitches together. And I'm going to knit to the end. And then when I turn my work and go back the other way, I'm going to decrease 1 at that neck edge and then do the same again, exactly as I did for the left side. I'm going to keep decreasing and on the size that you're doing. Okay, so that's what you need to do next. And then you want to cast off your shoulder exactly, and then do your 3 straight rows. Do your 3 straight rows and then cast off exactly the same. Okay, so that's what we're going to do next. I hope you're enjoying this tutorial and knitting this sweater if you're knitting one. I'm sure you are, otherwise you wouldn't have got this far. But if you have got this far, you should have a nice back and you should have a nice front that looks something like that. And they should be about the same size if you put them shoulder to shoulder together. Don't worry if there's a little bit of difference, because you just sort of stretch them to make them fit. But if it's too big, I mean, if you're about that much short, then something's wrong. If you've got any questions, pop them in the comments and I'll answer them, because I do keep my eye on them. So if you have got any, if you're stuck or not sure what it is you're supposed to be doing at any point in this pattern so far, just pop the notes in the comments and I'll respond. And if I need to do a little video to show people what it is they need to be doing, I'll do that as well. So now that we've got a back and a front, we're now going to go on and do the sleeves. I love doing the sleeves because they tend to go really quick. And we're going to be doing these balloon type sleeves. So we're going to be doing a little bit of increasing, and I will do that slowly and show you how to make the increases so we get some nice sleeves. And the good thing is, because we've got drop shoulders on here, you haven't got to do really long sleeves, because we're probably doing them from about there down. So you're only doing a small part. And then we'll be putting it together, so that's quite exciting. So come back to me then if you're still knitting, and we'll do the sleeves next. So we're moving on to the sleeves then. You're going to have to cast on 24 stitches for the first 2 sizes and 28 stitches for the second 2 sizes. And then you want to do a knit 2, purl 2 rib, exactly as you did for the back, for 7 rows. And then we're going to do the increase row, which is what I'm going to show you now, which will create the nice balloon that we're going to, the balloon shape that we're going to do. So what we're going to do is we're going to, for this row, we want to purl every stitch. And the reason we want to do that is because when you turn it round and start knitting, that will start your stocking stitch for you. So we want a nice smooth transition from your rib onto the bulk of the garment. So we're going to purl every stitch. So you're going to purl 2, and the way that we're going to increase, we're going to pick up this loop here. So can you see that loop in between? We're not going to purl front and back, we're going to purl into this stitch here. So you put your needle in, yarn over, pull it through. Keep it quite loose because you are going to get a bigger hole here. You see that? So you don't want it too tight. But what that will create is a nice pattern across the front of your work when we do that. And you can do this knit ways as well, so not on this garment, but then patterns where it will say make one, it will say M1, pick up loop, and that's how you do it. So you can do it knit ways or purl ways. For this item, we're doing it purl ways because I want a nice transition from the rib into the body of the garment. So for both of that, whether you're doing 24 stitches or 28 stitches, you'll get to the last 2 stitches. You're going to pick up one in between and then purl the last 2. Okay, like that. And then what you'll have when you turn it over is this. So it just looks the same, but you will have not quite doubled the number of stitches. What I'm going to do next is carry on. I'm going to swap my yarn over to my other colour, and then we're going to knit the first row. So you're going to do 8 rows, 2 inches of your alternate colour, and you're going to do that until the work measures about 17 inches from this bottom edge, and then just cast them all off. So I hope that's nice and clear. Any questions, pop them in the comments. Right, we should have done 2 sleeves, and you'll end up with 2 of these like this, about 17 inches long, or as long as you needed. There you go. And you know, earlier I was talking about how you thread the yarn up the side of your work, and that's what it will look like if you've done that. Nice and neat. So then I've only got to sew in one end. So we've got 2 sleeves, and we should have a back and a front, like so. So that's my back and my front. Okay, that's my front. As you can see, I've got my neck shaping there, and my needle, my stitches, my front neck stitches on a spare needle. My back I had on a thread, and now I've just put those on there, but I'll talk to you about that in a minute. What we need to do then is we're going to attach the neck, and obviously I'm going to be attaching my neck in yellow. And what you need to do first before we do that is attach the left shoulder. I've got it wrong loads of times and had to undo it, so I usually put the work up against myself, and then I know this is my left shoulder, and then turn it the wrong side and sew up that shoulder, weave in all your ends as well. It's easier to do it while your pieces are separate than it is afterwards. So I've just used an overstitch on my work there, so that is my row, and then on the right side you can see it's nice and neat. So I've just gone over and over and over, so it's nice and secure. And then once you've done that, we're ready to attach the neck. So get your contrasting colour, or whatever colour it is that you're using, and 8mm needles. If you prefer a tighter neck, go down a set of pins and use 7s. That will give it a tighter look rather than being too loose. Entirely up to you. As I say, choose your own adventure. I'm going with 8s because I want the whole garment to be quite casual and loose and soft. So that's what I'm going to do. And where we're going to start then, you want your work facing you. You'll have one shoulder done up there. That will just sit down here. And so you see we've got our back stitches. Then we're going to go down one side of the neck. Then we're going to pick up the stitches from the front neck. And then we're going to pick up some stitches along the other side of the neck. And then this will be the final shoulder that we'll sew up at the end. So the first thing you need to do with your work facing you, put your needle, put whatever stitches you had on your back holder onto your 8mm needle, or if you've gone down a size, your 7mm needle. I'm using 8s. Put it on there so that we're ready to start knitting that way. Okay, so away from that shoulder that's not sewn up. I'm going to attach my yarn. Well, I say attach, people say attach, don't you? But all you do is you knit the first stitch, because then you secure it afterwards. That's the way that I work. So I'm going to knit across these stitches here. So this is my back neck. First row is always a little bit fiddly, and the reason we're doing knit stitches is because the work's facing us, and if we were carrying on in stocking stitch, that would be a knit row. So we want a nice first row, in my opinion. This is the way that I do it. Not everybody will agree, but I like a nice first row all knitted or in the same stitch as where I'm ready to attach the neck. So if I was on a purl side, I'd be doing all pearls, unless there was some sort of pattern in it, in which case I would continue with the pattern. But because ours is stocking stitch and it is a nice flat, it's a nice flat stitch there, I'm going to knit as if I was just knitting another row. And I'm going to pick up all of the stitches that we're going to pick up in a minute. We're going to pick them up knit ways as well, so that we get a nice clean row ready to then do our rib, coming backwards and forwards. Okay, so I've knitted those. We're now going to pick up some stitches, and I'm going to show you how to do that. So with your work facing you like this, what you're going to do is pick up, I'm going to push it through the next stitch there. So I've got 2 up to now. So that's my 3. And then going into the next stitch there, I've got 4. And I'm going to keep doing that. And I've got my front neck stitches. I'm going to take my second needle and I'm going to put them onto there. So they come off your holder onto your needle, and then this will just look like you're knitting another row, and we're just going to knit these stitches. We put the needle in, have a little look. And then what we're going to do is work exactly as we did for the bottom rib and the sleeves, and we're going to do a knit 2, purl 2 rib to the end for 8 rows and then cast off. So 8 rows, knit 2, purl 2 and then cast off, and then we're ready to sew up our garment. Okay, once you've finished your 8 rows of 2 by 2 rib, excuse me, for the neck, you can then sew up the other shoulder, and you will have this. Ta-da! Perfect, perfect neck. So you've sewn up both shoulders like that, and so you've got a tabard type arrangement, both sides open. We don't want to sew those up yet. And what we're going to do now is inset the sleeves. So what you do is, there's the seam for the shoulder, grab one of your sleeves like this, fold it in half, like this, and then that's where we want the centre bit here. Okay, when we've got that centre bit, we want right sides together to start with, because that's the way that we're going to sew this up, because you want to sew it on the inside, don't we? Now, so what we're going to do is lay our work out like this. That's my centre seam just here. Oh, you can't see that, can you? Can you see this one? Yeah, that's better. Sorry, too close. So that's the centre seam there. And I've got my sleeve that I folded in half like that. And I've got my middle bit there. And then I'm going to put that middle bit against my centre seam, and then we're going to sew that end right the way across. What I usually do is I'll start sewing from the middle, because then I don't lose it. Of course, you can pin it if you want to, and that works just as easy. And what I'll try and do, so what you can see there is this edge will end up at that stripe. And so I'll make sure that this edge ends up at that stripe, and then I know that it's centred like that. And then that way I've got a nice centred sleeve. So we're going to do that on both sides and sew them in. And then when you turn it back that way, it will fit lovely. Okay, so you've got it facing the neck. All right, lovely. And then we'll sew up the sides, and we should have a nice finished jumper. Hopefully now you've sewn on your two sleeves. So we should have one sleeve and the other sleeve. And you'll have a jumper that looks like this. Like this. These sleeves. We're going to turn it inside out and just finish off sewing up the sides. And what I like about sewing up the sides when you've done stripes is that everything matches. So you don't have to worry about whether or not it's going to match properly, the ends and that sort of thing. So starting there, you've got your rib, and then your stripes should match. And this is sometimes where it is easier to have pinned out your work first and flattened it a little bit. But you know, I'm lazy, so I'm not going to do that. But these two, the stripes will guide me. And as I did with the shoulders, when I get to this little bit under the arm, where the arm joins, I'll use an overstitch to sew it up, even when I get to this bit under the arm where the seams meet. But then I will sort of back on it and do some extra stitches across there, across that seam, just to make sure it's properly secure and doesn't come undone later on, and then carry on back stitching. When you get to the sleeves, your stripes should still match like that all the way down. That's why I like stripes, because it helps you to make a garment that looks absolutely stunning, and you'll finish off there. So I'm going to do that down both sides, this one and the other side, and we'll have a finished garment, and then I will summarise for you. So I hope you've really enjoyed knitting along with me with this jumper, and that you have a lovely garment to wear at the end of it.